Welcome to my nerd world and this week's Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Jon Justice, and before we start the podcast this week, I wanted to take just a moment to remember Kenny Baker, the actor who gave life to R2-D2. If it hadn't been for Kenny Baker, when George Lucas decided to make the original Star Wars movie, Episode 4, A New Hope, getting inside of that tin can we all grew up loving as the droid R2-D2, if it hadn't been for Kenny Baker, then R2-D2 would have been a side character. He wouldn't have been nearly as popular as he was. At age 81, Kenny Baker passed away over the weekend, taking that journey to a galaxy far, far away. So this one's for Kenny. You will be missed, but you will be remembered in episodes 1 through 6. And again, if it wasn't for Kenny Baker, we would not have the R2-D2 that we all know and love today. So goodbye, Kenny, and thank you so much for your contributions and the joy that you brought to so many through your caricature of R2-D2.
My Nerd World.
The world is coming undone. Imperial flags reign across the galaxy.
Can you be trusted without your shackles?
Let's just get this over with, shall we?
We've a mission for you. A major weapons test is imminent. We need to know how to destroy it.
There isn't much time.
Every day they grow stronger.
There is a 97.6% chance of failure.
He means well.
This is our chance to make a real difference. Are you with me?
All the way.
May the Force be with us.
It's episode number 59 of the My Nerd World Star Wars podcast. Glad you're with us this week. First off, my apologies. I'm a big fan of podcasts, and as a talk show host, I know, and a guy who creates podcasts, I know how much, if you listen to a podcast, you look forward to hearing that podcast every week, and I have been bad at getting the podcast out there. Now, it's for good reason, okay? It's life involved, but it's for good reason, and I'll tell you what that reason is in just a moment, and then we're going to get into this Rogue One trailer that, I mean, blew me away. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting that, and I'm glad that I got that, because that was amazing. What Disney is doing and what we are in for with this movie. I am so excited in a much different way than I was excited for The Force Awakens, but and maybe not quite there, but getting pretty darn close. I was excited for The Force Awakens for a whole host of other reasons, but we'll get to that in just a moment. I'm not going to do an entire shot-by-shot breakdown. I just want to give you a bit of my feelings, my emotions, and my thoughts about this trailer and what this is going to do for the franchise moving forward. So before I do that, why haven't I been doing a podcast every week? Well, basically it's because I've been working on getting a new job. I'm a talk show host here in Tucson. I have been for 9 years. And this week I'm very pleased to announce that I am going to be moving with my family to Minneapolis to go work for iHeartRadio to co-host a show with a good friend of mine who actually hired me here in Southern Arizona for the job I currently do, Andrew Lee. And so because of that, I've just been really, really busy. And even today, I'm standing in a room that's way more of an echo chamber than it normally is because we've begun the process of packing. So that's the reason why there hasn't been a podcast every single week, and that's the reason why this podcast, episode number 59, is going to be the last podcast for several weeks until I'm finished with the move and I'm able to start the podcast back up with episode 60. Now, that being said, episode 60 is going to be special because part of my going up to do my Monday through Friday show in Minneapolis also means that I have resources I didn't have before, and I'm really excited to be taking the podcast not just through the means that I normally get it out there, but also part of their podcast network, and I'm hoping to not only have a wide range of weekly guests on the podcast, including Andrew, but I'm also hoping that the audience will grow of the podcast as well. So I'm really excited, and that's the reason why there haven't been as frequent a podcast as there have been before. So that will change here the first or second week of September once we get to episode 60. So again, my apologies if you listen to the podcast every week and wanting to know where it's been. That's why it hasn't been every single week. So let's get into this Rogue One trailer. Not going to spend a ton of time on this just because I have more packing to do, but I really want to get my thoughts down. I wanted to do a podcast when the trailer dropped on Thursday night. It's Saturday night right now. I just haven't had time. But it was funny, if you were like me and waiting for the trailer to arrive during the Olympics, I thought that the Star Wars fan community was going to riot because they were taking so long to show it on TV. I mean, they were a good hour and a half past when we all expected that this trailer was supposed to play. And it actually ended up getting released online prior to it even airing on TV. And it was funny because I went back to go watch it on TV because I had recorded the Olympics that night, so I'd have it. And, I mean, it ended up airing like another 45 minutes after it ended up playing online. Now, the funny part about that is that everybody was so ticked off and upset that the trailer hadn't dropped that it really, I thought that it was going to end up, being, what's the word I'm looking for? I was afraid the trailer wasn't going to end up delivering. And if it didn't, then everybody was going to be upset. But the moment the trailer hit online, everybody forgot about the fact that we had been waiting so long to watch this trailer. It no longer was an issue anymore because the trailer delivered on almost every single level. The only thing of the trailer that I wish we would have had more was perhaps a little bit more dialogue, but by comparison to, we'll just say The Force Awakens, we got about an equal amount of dialogue, and I'm sure in the next full trailer that we'll get probably sometime in October, we'll get even more dialogue. But this movie is really a lot more expansive than I imagined. It's a lot more dense than I imagined, and the visuals for the film, what Gareth Edwards has been able to do just in these few shots that we've seen, it's just breathtaking. Whether it's the opening shot of the Star Destroyer above that city that sits on that plateau of a mountain, which we assume that's Jeddah, right? And I believe we talked about that in the previous podcast. To how dense the street life was in the city, to the epic shot of the Death Star floating over the planet. And everybody keeps saying it's upside down, but of course, something being upside down is relative in space. If you're in a spaceship and heading towards that planet and the Death Star appears to be on top of the planet, if you turn your spaceship upside down, it's on the bottom of the planet and it's right side up. So it really just provides a cool visual with really no other explanation necessary for why the laser dish is on the bottom side of the Death Star. It just happens to be the angle of which we saw it. The shot of, and this reminded me quite a bit of when we saw The Phantom Menace, but the shot of the U-Wing flying over that desert-type landscape just so reminded me of The Phantom Menace when we saw Queen Amidala's starship in the beginning flying away from Naboo. And of course, the epic shot there towards the end of Jyn Erso walking on that plank to the TIE fighter, to the massive explosion taking place on the planet. I mean, the visuals and the dynamic of this movie just look fantastic. And it's interesting, too, because I'd gone back recently and watched Godzilla, which is Gareth Edwards' film, and he does have a very distinct sort of filming aesthetic. And it's clearly coming through in what I'm seeing in these shots for Rogue One. But it is something very different. And that's what I'm really liking about it, is that, look, we were all hyped for The Force Awakens. I mean, we were all just clamoring to watch that movie because Star Wars was back, right? And we also know that was very familiar. It felt very, familiar, and it had the tones and the themes, and it was new and fresh, but it did all have a very familiar, vibe to it. This does too because it's Star Wars, but visually speaking, it is a lot more dynamic. And it's really tough to put my finger on it, but I watched A New Hope the other night, and it doesn't look like the shots in the Rogue One trailer. They don't look like A New Hope, right? Because New Hope was shot so long ago. We all know the story of how difficult it was for George Lucas to make this movie, the editing process. I mean, that movie was made in such a way where it was a focus on the story and getting it done, where here Gareth Edwards has the ability, and with reshoots as well that everybody's been talking about, right? He has the ability to really add an artistic flavor to it, and it certainly feels that way. The movie just feels epic in scope, and that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about something different and new. I'm excited about being able, on a cinematic level, to go into a Star Wars movie and really not have to be burdened. It probably isn't the right word, but that's the word I'm going to use. Not have to be burdened or saddled with the questions that arise in a Star Wars saga movie. What's going to happen to Kylo Ren? Who are Jin's, I'm already doing it right. Who are Rey's, parents? And is she going to become a Jedi? Why has Luke been on Ahch-To? I mean, all those things in the saga films that really, are a part of it, and they're enjoyable. But you can go into Rogue One and just go in just for the experience of the movie, and you're not burdened by the history and the legacy of this film. It can just stand. It is what it is. It can stand on its own, and not only can it stand on its own, but it can stand on its own and then give to us the familiarity of what we saw during that time in the Star Wars universe, right around when A New Hope took place. I just am so incredibly excited for this movie, and this trailer just blew away my expectations. Absolutely blew away my expectations. And not only did it give us the visuals we wanted, but it did give us some character study too. There's a moment with Bodhi Rook in the trailer, who's the pilot of the U-Wing. This was after K2SO makes the comment of the odds. There's a whatever percentage that we may not make it out alive, and Cassian Andor says, Diego Luna's character says, he's trying, or he means well. And there's just this one quick shot of Bodhi Rook looking over, and who knows if it's to that scene, but you can just tell this look of puzzlement, of questioning. The one shot that we get of Ben Mendelsohn and director, the Krennic, just looking angry in the white outfit with the cape. It just looked, the character there was emoting so much in that moment. And so I like the fact that they really did give us both the visual pairing with a focus on the characters as well. And the one shot, that's probably my favorite shot, is when, and is it Baz Malbus? Is that right? He fires that bazooka, if you will, at the AT-ACT, and it hits the head, and the head almost moves like it's in pain. I just thought that shot is just so cool. This, all the questions about the reshoots, all the uncertainty surrounding this movie, I think for the fandom was really just totally and completely washed away by what we were given in this trailer, and really, took it up to a level where the hype is now starting. I was wondering when we were going to get on the hype train, and you got to hand to Disney. They're doing it right once again, and I think that this train is beginning to pick up steam and will roll on right to